here. You're with us here at the bridge. We have Francis Adams and, of course, myself, Teresa Hamilton. Twala and Sean should be here shortly. But anyway, we're just glad to have you here with us, and we're going to discuss some things. The title of our show today is Re-Africanizing Africa.
Well, African Americans.
African Americans, because so many of us out there as an African American have, we really don't know our history. We don't know our destiny. We are a little bit in a confused state. And so one of the things we want to do this evening is really help you know a little bit more about Africa, the motherland. And there are some interesting facts about Africa, like it used to be called not Africa, but the cradle of creation.
Yes,
civilization. It also used to be called the motherland. So anyway, we really want to get back to our roots here on the bridge. This is a show that reconnects all of those that are from the African diaspora to the motherland. And so we're just going to take this opportunity to have Francis talk a little bit about Africa, and I'm going to ask him a few questions as he endeavors on this talk.
Right. So, I mean, to start with, the first thing that I want to tell my fellow African American brothers and sisters is that Africa is not a country. Africa is a huge continent. It's made up of 53 or 54 different, states. So, and it's much larger than the United States. It's huge. It's massive, and it's a mixture of different cultures, people of different cultures, different traditions, languages, even skin color, and all that. And usually, when I meet African Americans and they ask me about Africa, and they make it sound as if Africa is one big place where all dark-skinned people are. I try to educate them that it's not a country, and is made up of a diverse group of people. There are light-skinned people, there are dark-skinned people, there are different tribes and clans and so on. So it's really where you are referring to. One thing that used to bother me is when I hear people say, "Oh, he's going to Africa." We tend to believe that they are going to where most of the African Americans came from, which is West Africa. But maybe in most cases they are either going to see the wildlife, go on the safari in East Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, or more commonly they go to South Africa, which is a much more developed kind of Western kind of place. And so when Steve Harvey says he's gone to Africa and he's gone to see the wildlife in South Africa. For me, he hasn't really been to Africa. That is the way I see it. Because if you really need to connect with the people, the people that you came from, the place to go really is West Africa. And West Africa is from in countries like Senegal, Guinea, Ivory Coast, Liberia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Nigeria, all the way to Angola. So basically that's the introduction.
Well, what I want to do is really talk about, as I mentioned on the show before, I was real fortunate because my mother visited Africa when I was about 8 years old. And she really indoctrinated me into the culture, especially when she went to Liberia, which is West Africa. But she was very good at telling me some of the myths, and that's what I want to talk about right now. What are the myths about Africa? And the first one is that you live in jungles. You want to speak to that?
Yes. So we're in 2019, right?
Yes.
I mean, Africa, first of all, Africa is not a jungle, right? We don't live up trees. We are not, we don't have lions lying around, climbing, whatever it is, and giraffes, messing up and so on. We have a developed community. We have cars, we have cities, we have towns, we have rich people, we have poor people, we have places where you can fly an airplane to Africa, to Ghana. So it's not what they say it is at all.
Right.
Of course, there are the forests
yes.
and places where the animals are and so on. But where people live, in most cases, they are not always in touch with nature like we think.
Right. Right.
So basically that's it.
And the other thing there are a few customs about Africans and what you do. And I wanted you to speak on them, like brushing your teeth, just a few little things that you guys do differently from us in the Western Western societies. So you want to speak on that? A couple of the customs.
Okay, so a few months ago, I was talking to you, and I realized that, I started saying something and you were totally lost, and that was before the white man came. How were we taking care of ourselves? I mean, what were we doing so we obviously don't smell or our mouths don't stink and so on? And I said there are several things that Africans, at least from where I come from in West Africa and Ghana, that I have read about and I've learned, experienced myself. There are certain things that you are taught as you are growing up, or you practice as you are growing up. First of all is to brush your teeth.
Right.
Now, before the white man came and the toothbrush and the toothpaste and all that, we've always had our own way of cleaning our teeth and preventing tooth decay. We get we take certain herbs, not herbs, but twigs from trees, and we peel them, and we chew the tip and make it into a little brush.
And I found this fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Right, then we use that to brush our teeth. And usually the plants that we get these things from have medicinal qualities. Some of them will prevent tooth decay, will prevent your mouth from stinking, and so on. They have, these are things that have been trusted by, practiced by our forefathers and all that. They tried and tested, that's what I want to say.
Right.
So that is how we kept our mouth clean. So even when I was growing up, there are certain families, and some of us always had to, our parents wanted us, even though we were using the Western method of brushing the teeth with the toothpaste and all that. I remember when I was much younger, my parents would insist that even before you use the toothpaste and toothbrush, you have to use the chewing stick first.
Right.
Because it cleans your mouth much better.
Right.
And they actually didn't like the toothbrush thing.
Right. Well, we also know that the fluoride we use has stuff in it to kind of keep us calm and tame, so it has a little chemical stuff in it. So your way sounds a lot better in listening, and you've managed to keep all your teeth.
Yeah. and one very interesting thing is that tooth decay, in at least where I grew up, was not very common. It still
Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
I think that's fascinating.
Yes, most of us have all our teeth.
Right.
All the way till we are very, very old.
Wow.
And I believe it's one of the things that we get from going the natural way and chewing those herbs.
Right. That sounds interesting. Now, before we go to break, I want you to discuss, and then we're going to talk a little bit more, and then Twala and Sean will join us at that point. But I want you to talk a little bit about the beads that women wear.
Oh, okay. So we have different, it's a little complicated if I have to talk about this, because there are so many cultures. Even in Ghana, within Ghana, there are several tribes, and their practices vary from tribe to tribe. But the basic I think with most of them, I think the southern tribes in Ghana, most of the women wear beads around their waist, you know, and the beads are usually put on the kids when they are young, extremely young, like, you know, days old and so on. Now, what we found out was that when they put the beads around the wrists and the ankles and the waist, it was a way for them to know if the child was growing up healthily. Wow. You know, if the child obviously was not eating well, it means that the child will not grow and the beads and wouldn't be tight. So when it gets tight, then they cut it and put another one just to monitor the growth of the child. Right. So that was a very, very interesting thing.
Interesting.
Now, with the ones around the waist, most women wear it even through their old age. Wow. And it's also believed to have some, you know, first of all, it's supposed to give the women the curves. Right. Because that means the shape. Yeah, the shape.
And you know, African women have beautiful shapes.
Right. Right. And they also have all these religious characteristics that people believe that they help with fertility and all kinds of interesting things. It's so wide and varied that if we say we want to talk about it, we need a lot of time to discuss just with the beads. Right, right. But one very thing that I want to say before we go to break is I found out later in life that when guys were courting girls, you know, one thing that they used to do was to chew corn. You know the popcorn that you guys have? Yeah. They have a way of roasting the corn and chew it. Okay. And you know what it does? No. It gives you fresh breath. Oh, that's good. So we had our own way of refreshing our mouths. Right. You know, before the white man came. Wow, wow. This has been very interesting, Francis. I even got more detail than our initial conversation. Yeah, yeah. And so anyway, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk a little bit more while Francis is here, but we're going to take a break and we'll be joined by Sean and Twala. So stay tuned and don't go anywhere. Right. Everyone has a story to tell, and I know you do too. But you don't know where or how to start? Imagination Press will help you. Write, edit, and publish your book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Lulu.com, Ingram, as well as helping you reach markets across the globe. Call us today on 301-379-2709 for a free one-on-one consultation, or visit our website and send us an email, imaginationpressonline.com. Again, that's imaginationpressonline.com. Imagination Press is your complete guide to publishing, branding, and promotions. Give us a call today. Okay, we're back here, and we've got the lovely Twala.
Oh, my.
And she may look injured, but boy, look at her beautiful face. A little injured, but still looking gorgeous.
She was out there fighting for you guys.
Oh,
so
yes.
Again, we're not just up here talking about it, we being about it.
Right.
Get involved. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Janet. Y'all know we had Janet Jackson on the show. Also, you know, so I am so happy to be here because you know something now. I know all y'all know about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And y'all seen the Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
Okay, and the dude behind the curtain would happen to be the wizard.
Yes.
Hey, Francis. That's our wizard.
I love it.
Y'all get to see him. He was alive. Y'all didn't think I was playing, but yes, he's our wizard. Yeah. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, we're so happy to have him.
Okay. Oh, also, right quick, I want to send a shout out to my little brother, Jermaine.
Birthday!
Happy birthday, Jermaine! Yay. And also a happy birthday to his wife.
Yay!
So now, again, you know something, they're out on location, out on the West Coast trying to do their thing. which is our thing, which is your thing. So get involved. So, hey, Jermaine, and what's his wife's name?
Wife.
Miss Wright.
We miss you guys.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Be safe, come back. We got it, man.
Yeah.
But anyway, how everybody doing?
We're doing good. We're doing
It's
good.
good to see you guys.
Oh,
My
good.
God.
Wow, this is beautiful. This is beautiful, folks.
So, Twala, you have a few more questions for Mr. Francis?
Yes. Well, like I was telling him, I have been researching Laura Kofi, who was a Ghanaian prophetess. Back in the turn of the century, she was a Garveyite. Well, she ended up becoming a Garveyite. Her whole idea was to get blacks that are in the diaspora in America to return back to Ghana, to go back home. Her contention was that, why are you all going to stay here to build a country where people don't want you? Go back to your own country and let's build that up. And let's take over. Let's do what we're supposed to do. And that message was resounding loud and clear. Marcus Garvey went to prison for a short period of time for, I think it was mail fraud at this time. And so when he got out, jealousy is a heavy pill that is continued to swirl. So he was kind of jealous of the notoriety she had garnered, but she was doing this in his stead. Well, then he put a hit out on her, said that she should be killed.
Oh, he did that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. He's the one that said that she should be killed. He was saying that somebody should assassinate her. He was really putting some real reckless conversation out, which was really wrong. And eventually, someone did. She had to go into hiding. She had to relocate, the whole 9 yards. She had to leave and go to Florida, and she stayed on there and tried to be an anonymous person. But because her call was too great, she couldn't just stay in anonymity.
Wow.
And she ended up becoming a martyr. And, we talk about all these different black historians and these names.
Yes.
And that's what I like about us on Connect to the Bridge. And you need to stay connected with us, too. Because we don't give you everything every day that everybody else is giving you. And it hurt me to find out that not only did she get assassinated, but the guy who they thought killed her, the crowd beat him to death.
Wow.
Beat him to death. So this connection with us and Ghana has been going on
for a
long time.
Right.
So it's wonderful to know that Ghana is the only African nation that has a true pathway to citizenship where you can maintain dual citizenship. There's requirements, of course, as with anything, but it's the only African nation that has reached out to the Africans in the diaspora that you can have dual citizenship, which is another reason why you really need to consider getting back to Ghana before the end of the year. This is the year of return. There's an event coming on this August, I know, and then I know in December. So I know we have a long relationship with all the Ghanaian leaders, and I want you to tell us more about that relationship with us.
Okay. I mean, maybe I should have done a little more research on it, but I know over the years we've had several events we call the homecoming event. I think they had one earlier this year or last year. And the idea behind it is to not just have African Americans not move back home, but just come and find out for yourself. It's supposed to be to get the Africans in the diaspora to come home and help build, the countries. Personally, I came to the United States about 9 years ago, and one of the things that really bothers me is why we haven't, black people in Ghana, Ghanaians, haven't connected with African Americans. It bothers me because there's so much to gain on both sides. There is so much. Ghana, I can talk about Ghana because I'm from Ghana, right? And of course, there are other African countries. There are the French-speaking, African countries in West Africa and so on. But Ghana is a place where I'm not promising that everything is hunky-dory, that everything is nice and smooth and everything. We are a developing country. We've had issues with politics and military, regimes and so on. So we are kind of dusting ourselves off those things. But can you imagine if we got a couple of African Americans to come and invest.
Let me cut you off for 1 second. What do you consider yourself in this country? An American or a Ghanaian?
Ghanaian.
Ghanaian.
Okay.
Ghanaian. I haven't even thought of it.
Okay, the reason why I asked,
Right,
because we use the term now African American, right? But really, we're Africans in America.
Yeah.
Because the Constitution wasn't written with us in mind.
Okay.
The reason why I say that, and I'm leading up to, Twiley was at an event last week fighting for you guys, whereas every other ethnic country was represented. Africans in America, actually they had an African group, but Africans in America or African Americas wasn't a part of any of those groups, so they didn't even have a seat at the table to discuss legislation, how they can improve on our communities. There wasn't a black group in America that represented us black folks in America, which I find that alarming. And again, like I said, now an African group was there.
Oh, there was an African group.
Yeah, there was an Africa group,
But not an
but
African
that was
one.
for Africa.
Okay.
You know, and yes, you guys have your things that's going on and your plights and whatnot, but now the narrators of this meeting was white.
So yes, it was. They were. It was the Maryland Governor's Commission on Ethnic Affairs. It was an ethnic summit. So when you say ethnic, multicultural ethnic,
You would think you would have African
anyone that's
American.
white, anyone that's not Caucasian,
Right.
I expected there. So we go inside there, and it's my invitation. You go in. There's the tables, the soiree of all this food from this country, this from this country. Oh, jollof rice. Oh, I got it. Woo, wait. See, all this food, and then all these people. So I'm sitting down, take my little bulletin, and I'm opening the brochure. I'm checking through. So the first page had the governor and the name of the persons that were supposed to be the moderators. Then the next page had the African Commission, the African Initiative Commission, and that was any person from Africa. There were Nigerians, there were Ghanaians, there were some from Togo, and Benin. So, and I think there was someone from Cameroon and somewhere else. Okay, so then you flip over, and it's the Asian Pacific. So that would be more your persons that live in Hawaii, that area, okay, and in Thailand. So then you go to Middle Eastern, and that's everyone in the Middle East considered. And of those in that group, I did not meet anyone who was of Israeli ethnicity. No, everyone was from either Cairo or Palestinian.
That's interesting.
It was very interesting because I talked to them at great length. There was a group for the Asians, and you're talking about there were Chinese and Vietnamese. There was a commission for Latinos. So there were Dominicans, Guatemalans, Mexicans, and I think someone from Costa Rica. And then Native Americans, Indians. So there would be Cherokee, Muskogee, and some Creek. And then the page is about the initiatives. Not one commission is there of African Americans. So I found that discouraging.
Well, I think part of it is that we're getting to the point of irrelevance.
Exactly.
And that, what you raised is an interesting point. And that is why it's so important for us to really have a sense of where we're from and what we're about. But related to Ghana and West Africa and the name African American, in doing some further research, we realized that a part of Africa was called Negro Land on the maps. Because we don't educate ourselves, don't know about this information, and that's why initially we were called Negroes.
But that again was a name that was given to us because before the Arabs enslaved Africans, Africans were identified by their tribes.
Right.
You know, your Bantu, your Fanta, your Yoruba, whatever tribe. And because of these imaginary lines, well, these lines were marked in by these colonizers, they didn't take into consideration tribe lineage and tribal affiliations. And that's why you have people that are grouped together that probably would do better being in their own areas.
Right.
And that has caused, I know, great conflict with a lot of people I've spoken to that are Nigerian. You know, there's 4 sects, and they just, this one doesn't speak to this one can't marry that one. I said, what? You know, you're all Nigerian. No, it's not the same. It's okay. So then they had the Zanj Rebellion, but see, that name Zanj, Z-A-N-J, is an Arab name for black. So they were the first ones. Get it right. Get it straight. Get it accurate. While you all on Allah and Muslim move, you don't understand. They did the same thing that the Catholics did. They pushed their religion off on the African peoples. It was convert or die. So there was this big rebellion. So then they were the ones who connected with the Portuguese, and the Portuguese were the ones who started trading off. And that's how we got the word negro, which is Spanish for negra, which means black in Spanish. So that's how we got it. So that's how they termed it. So the problem I have is that every name to identify us, everybody else gave it.
Right, and we haven't given it one time. Well, part of it is what you mentioned before, because we do know the number of tribes that were in Africa, and the colonists just came along and said, like you said, all of the boundaries were blurred.
They drew them.
They drew them.
They drew them to their advantage.
Teresa, too, we need to take the price tag off of us. And I say
I like
the price tag, because even then, the young lady that we talked to at the mall, and we was, you know, where was she from?
She was from Nigeria or Cameroon.
Nigeria, I think.
Nigeria.
That sounds.
She's Nigerian.
But anyway,
she was Yoruba.
and
she
we
was,
was you know, questioning her. And see, we need to ask each other questions.
Yes.
So we'll know.
Right.
But
hi, Caroline.
is that her name? Okay. Hi, Caroline. But anyway, we was asking her questions and how the system was set up. Whereas, okay, we're going to let a few to the table. We'll give you a little bit of power, but you got to control the others. So there's a bunch of separation there within them, because she said, what was she saying about?
She said, just like Dr. Churchill, and he's a environmental specialist, and he's Nigerian, and I met him a couple months ago now, and I asked him, I was talking about pathways to citizenship. I said, I asked him the question in front of everyone, because I have to know these answers and I have to ask the source. I said, why is it that keeps you all from embracing us? I said, I need to understand that. I said, I know people are on this Pan-African, and I don't have a problem with being a Pan-Africanist, but I also am a purist as far as wanting to get things right in this country.
Right.
You know, I want things right to be there, I want things right to be here, so my interests are evenly tied. I said, but what is it about not wanting to gravitate to us? And he said, I have to tell you, it's not that we don't want to gravitate to you. We've been told a lot of hysteria and stereotypes, and that goes both ways. We had stereotypes about Africans too. Remember growing up, the Tarzan movies, they were always this wild people, and you needed this Caucasian man to get the animals together and save the day, and all these, you know, this nonsense. Johnny Weissmuller and Buster Crabbe, I forgot who else was anyway. So then he said, but we have problems within ourselves. He said, we have tribal problems. He said, we have political issues. He said, when he said, and he said something very cogent, and I meditate on that a long time. He said, what has happened is that America has tried to push its form of government, its way of democracy, without taking into consideration the culture, the dimensions of everything, and that type of the way that America has it set up. It doesn't really work for us.
Well, I think, and Francis, I know you can speak to this a bit more, is that, and this is a thing, and this is why and that's just me, although we work on behalf of African Americans, everyone on this bridge, we do that, I can't get caught up in race too much, because we always have tribal or differences. But one of the things I really think is important to right or wrong is, I know when I speak with my Caucasian friends, the one question they have is, why can't African leaders and countries get it together? And it's tied into what you're talking about. You want to speak to that, Francis, in terms of your assessment?
Well, the way things have worked over the years, the way we were colonized, everything that was supposed to be our culture, our tradition was referred to as not good enough.
Oh, yeah.
Everything was bad. Everything black. That is why we have terms like black sheep and black this, everything black.
Yeah, you're right about that.
You know, so what I always say is that we were taken advantage of in a very bad way. And I've always believed that when you study, when you get the chance to study African studies and learn how our cultures evolved and the things that we were doing before the white man came, you'd be amazed. You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we had our own form of democracy, our own form of government, all kinds of things that made us
Can you
thrive.
speak more about the chiefs? Because I think this is fascinating. And the chief mother.
Oh, that, you see, that's again, it's wide and diverse, right? There are certain tribes that practice the patrilineal kind of inheritance, which makes the father, the main, the inheritance will pass down the father's line, and there are some too that practice the matrilineal, which is the other way, and so that also would go to show how the town is governed or is ruled. We have so there are so many of them that you can't really and they all have their advantages and disadvantages.
Right.
But then if we try to go into that, it's going to get very complicated.
Right.
But basically, we had a system that worked, right? And we were not hanging up trees and chasing
You were
lions
civilized
and all that. Oh,
Right.
yes.
Whereas so they came in and they called themselves educating. They took you guys' numbering systems, your arts, your sciences, and now and all of the debauchery they brought over.
Yeah.
That's a Western thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so, like I said, okay, well, even when they came to America, like you could say too, the masters had their Sambos who was living in the house that kind of dressed a little bit better than the slave, ate a little bit leftovers better than the slave, and so that mentality has grew into what we have,
a worldwide system.
Exactly. So it's not just there, it's here too, that something they took on those same attributes and those same attitudes. So again, associating us blacks in America being from Africa, we're uncivilized, we're this, we're that,
Propaganda.
and they exactly, and they portray that all the time on the news.
Right.
And again,
but that's because we don't own the media. We don't own the media outlets, and whomever owns the media controls what goes out.
Well, that's true too, but
but
yet
they would
still.
never have that type of image, or no one would have the type of image of us if we controlled every media outlet that we were on. If we controlled if we owned all of it.
Well, we had a media outlet.
No.
I mean, you know what I mean? Whereas we were so hard up for this inclusion that we were fighting for this, affirmative action and these type of, but see, these are their tricks that they put in.
Right.
So now, let me stop you from doing your thing and let you take your thing and melt it into our thing, and then we'll eventually X you out, and your thing will become our thing, and we become less and less. Now, when we didn't have inclusion, we went out and did it ourselves.
Right.
Yes,
You know something?
But the
And-
problem is that everything that we did, and this is the one thing a lot of people across every part of the world never knew, was that not only were we able to do it for ourselves, that we were doing it without any kind of recompense. We were and have our own communities. We had towns.
Yes.
But there were Caucasians that were not as prosperous as the blacks that were there. And then they would set these places on fire or bomb and torch these
Right.
buildings and everything. And then we got into this mentality that what we had wasn't as good. So that's something that we as being
Psychological.
ingrained.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
have
yeah,
psychological
yeah.
warfare with us is tough.
Yeah.
Because we were convinced, made to believe that nothing we did was as good as everybody else.
Right.
But the problem and the truth lies in this. Everything we do, everybody copies.
Yes, yes. And
It's just that. Excuse me. It's
Everything.
just that simple.
Everything.
Now, right down to
Music, hair,
laying out in the
clothing,
sun,
skin.
burning up. I mean, literally burning up till you go from pink to a bright red, to where if you touch,
Right.
you know, and of course now we know too much sun causes cancer.
right.
So you're gonna put yourself at risk to darken your skin, but you don't like people with already dark skin.
This is
Well,
why
maybe
we-
it's
this
a
is-
jealousy
This is why
too.
we are exceptional people. I want you to understand that we are exceptional people.
Right.
We are, and Dr. Claude will run this home with you. We are exceptional people.
Yes.
Because who else could have ever gone through everything that we've gone through
And,
around the
and
globe
and still
and
standing.
still be standing?
But let me say this. You see, ever since I was a kid, every time I've come into contact with African Americans, growing up in Ghana, we were always fascinated about the African American culture. I grew up in a time of
Bootsy.
bootsy,
Relevant funk.
Yeah.
Parliament, funk, shake, all that delegation, all these bands, and we all. I told you before in the
Right,
previous show
right.
that every young man's dream, was to come to America.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I find myself here, and what I'm trying to ask myself is, what can I do, for my people back home?
Wow.
Right? And my first few interactions with African Americans, like I said, I realized they didn't know much about where they came from. That is where I'm coming from, right? And so, wouldn't it be nice if I would just, teach them or
Yes.
educate them
Right.
Yes.
on what the culture is and what we really are? Because a lot of what you've heard, the stories, the tales, they are not true.
Right.
Yeah.
You want to speak about your books?
Books.
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what?
So,
yeah.
so one of the ways we are trying to do this
Yes.
is to introduce some books that I have written, which have based on what the culture that I grew up, with, and in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks, we'll do
Yes.
a launching. We'll
Yes.
probably bring some of the copies here,
Right.
and just try and teach the basic, things, the
Yes.
truth about Africa.
Yes.
Especially Ghana, where I always say most of African Americans came from. Because you look, whenever I'm walking the streets of Baltimore, sometimes I feel, especially when I go down to the
Lexington Market.
Lexington, I feel like I'm in Ghana.
Yes.
Because every person I see there looks familiar.
Yes.
And I always tell you, Sean, the day you go to Ghana, the day you land in Accra, you turn around and you realize that is Uncle Jimmy, that's Auntie Elsie. That is,
Yeah.
you're going to see people who look just like you.
Yeah.
Wow.
But let's turn all this thing around
Yes.
into something
Yes.
good.
Positive.
Absolutely.
Because,
Positive.
like I was saying, my statement was, I started by saying, ever since I met African Americans, there's always been this anger that, why have they been so horrible to us? Why did the white man do this to us, and so on and so forth? But that I've heard this over and over again. So why don't we begin to turn
Oh,
things
that's
around?
beautiful. That's
Exactly.
beautiful. That's
Exactly.
beautiful.
Let's celebrate some of our traditions. Our festivals, our music, our
Yes.
dance.
Yeah.
But interestingly, it started already. I just realized that when you go to the nightclubs, I'm too old to go to a nightclub, but
Okay, shit. He's telling you that.
That's from the silent majority. You had to speak out, yeah. He said, no,
what I realize is
All right.
contemporary African music is now very popular in America. Yes.
You know, the
I mean,
Afrobeats?
yes,
Oh,
you
yeah.
call it Afrobeat, and these are
yeah.
those are the roots of black music, hip hop, and all that.
Yes, yes.
You know, hip hop is. We started hip hop. There's a particular musician in Ghana called J. Dublé. He performs. He's currently, I think, in Europe. He's performing, and he was one of the first guys who started rapping when I was about 10 years old.
Wow.
And one of these days, I'll come and play some of his music.
Yeah,
And you see, we have so much in common.
But you know something, Francis? This shows the uniqueness of us as a people,
Yes.
where we can take nothing
And make something.
and make something.
The creativity. the
Exactly. Because
creativity.
when we were brought here, we had nothing, and we've invented this whole African American culture in America that was, seen around the world. So again, whoa, that's us over there.
Yes.
That's
But
my cousin. That's
do you realize how powerful the African American
brand is.
is?
We need to recognize that.
Everywhere, even the Chinese want to
Exactly.
do hip hop.
Emulate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The clothing.
The clothing.
The
Exactly.
slang,
Yes.
the music,
Yes.
everything. It's that powerful.
It's
Yes.
just that powerful. And see, and that's why, again,
We need to have a better sense of pride about that.
Yes.
check our egos at the door.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Let's
Yes.
stop this infighting, this separation. Take the price tag off of you,
Right.
and then also those that have been bought, expose and expel.
Right. Right. That's good.
You know what I mean? So, because
Ian.
if we don't, if we don't stand up for us,
Right. I like that.
if we don't stand up for us, who's going to stand up for we?
Yeah, and that's why, like I
Nobody.
said, with the race argument, we have hurt ourselves, just like with the Marcus Garvey piece you mentioned. We have done more to hurt ourselves than anybody has done to us. We've got to be united in solidarity. And a lot of the countries in Africa, because people are always saying, well, I don't want to go to Africa because I'm afraid of a coup. And a lot of those coups happen because an African leader has a choice. You either get in line with the colonizer or you die. You could have $1 million tomorrow or death. Those are the only two choices you get. Am I right, Twala?
That's right. Absolutely.
And so as a result, we've got to really understand, and I want to employ us to do more reading, not just reading the books that are around that they give us, but we've got YouTube now. We can go to the libraries, some of these better libraries. We can get firsthand accounts
And we have
of what
Imagination
happens.
Press.
Oh, yes.
And
Yes,
we-
yes,
And we
that's
have
right.
Francis books coming
Yes,
out.
Francis
Yeah.
books
You
coming.
know what I
So
mean?
we know, like you said,
That's right. There's a book fair that's going on next month. They're giving the award. I just got the notice in Chicago for African American children's writers.
yes.
No disrespect to any of you all that have won or are the winners. That's fine, but next year we'll be there.
Yes,
That's
yes,
all I have to say.
yes.
Next year we'll be there because they have writers from all different countries in Africa. And I said, okay, it's nice, it's nice. And I said, my cousin's stuff will be there next year.
Yeah, right, right,
Absolutely.
right.
That's all.
And so
But these
we,
books are phenomenal.
yes, they are. We can't
understate them.
wait. We cannot
They-
Oh,
wait.
and
Tell
they're
them
an
about
easy
that.
read. I mean, so we started off with Dick and Jane, and see Dick run, see Jane hop, or whatever. I mean, and
Oh,
I ain't gonna say that's the first time we kind of really learned about white people, but
No, but
No,
did
I
you-
there
understood
wasn't
you
there
a lot.
wasn't no black.
I've
Name a
always
black
known.
character in Dick and Jane.
really?
that's
Oh,
my-
yeah.
Because
Exactly.
we also
Spot.
grew up.
Yeah,
The dog.
yeah.
That was always
Yeah.
your name.
It was a dog.
Yeah, we
That's
all-
the only thing of color that you saw in Dick and Jane. you know what I mean?
We also grew up with Jack and Jill.
Oh,
Jack-
really?
yeah, exactly. So
That's right. Dick and Jane
So,
and Jack.
so by the time,
Oh,
I
wow.
think by the time we were in like 6th grade, we knew
We didn't want to
everything
read.
about the British Empire.
Oh, wow.
see,
We knew everything.
Yeah.
You know? And even though where I grew up, they had a smart way of, incorporating our traditional studies and our own politics and history and all that with the stuff from Britain, from the UK. It was interesting. So by the time, I never understood why we had to celebrate Christmas with, the pine tree. Because we don't have any pine trees.
Okay, I'll tell you that one. I'll tell you what that is. And that's a German custom, and I don't ascribe to Christmas trees. Christmas tree is a pagan celebration, symbol of eternal life. See, when the Catholic Church took and decided to make Christmas in December, which actually, if you're talking about the birth of the Christ child, which would mean maybe September, October, sometime in that area, they took it and moved it to December because the pagans in Rome were celebrating the winter solstice, and they wanted to bring the pagans in to celebrate, so they figured we move our celebration up to this date too. We can celebrate with them. They'll come to church.
This woman knows everything.
She does. Very well read. Very well read.
But again, it shows how they manipulate information. And just to throw this out, you guys know Easter is coming up. And
Resurrection.
7th. So it's about the lamb, not the bunny.
Well,
keep that in mind.
Well, real quick.
While you're looking for a bunny, you better be looking for the lamb.
That's good.
Real quick. Easter is actually a pagan name again. It's for the pagan goddess Ashtar, which means spring goddess. The bunny rabbit, the eggs were supposed to be for the goddess. She's the goddess of fertility. So the rabbit with a bunch of eggs is supposed to be for fertility. And that's how we got, so a lot of things that we celebrate, well, a lot of things that are celebrated, some of us don't, are pagan traditions. Pagan. Just like that nativity scene, that's a lie. People complain about nativity scene. Why are you complaining about it? It's not true anyway. There weren't 3 wise men. You only know of 3 names. You don't know how many wise men there were. And then when they went up to him, found him, he wasn't in a manger. He was a child. It says he went to the house. Keep reading that book while you're playing.
Right.
You pretend that you're all this. Read that book.
Read the
book.
book.
At that scene, it was Mary and her husband and this baby in a manger with a bunch of stinky, funky animals. And then the angel had went and had met with the shepherds out in the field and had this great big old celestial celebration in the sky. The angel did not come and hang out over the manger. It was a star that they followed.
Right.
Come on down. You didn't see some blonde hair,
and that's
blue
the
eyes.
importance of reading
you
and really
study this.
Yeah, really studying and
Can
reading.
I throw this in?
Throw.
Okay, in the manger,
Throw.
it wasn't Kenny G in there, right? You know, that's what they,
Inside joke. You got
it wasn't Kenny G, so yeah.
Right.
But I have a question real quick, though, and I have a comment. You're talking about what you had, and I know we're almost running out at the top of the hour, but you were talking about what you had learned, all these things about the British Empire growing up.
Right.
And Margaret, I know you're watching. Let me know. Now, we went to St. Bernard School. I don't remember learning anything about, and we had geography classes. We had history and we had geography. And the only thing we learned in geography about Africa was that it was the dark continent. And we saw pictures of pygmies.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember
Oh,
that. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was it. I remember that.
That was the extent
top-
of our
Pygmies.
And the pygmies
And
the topless women and
the topless women,
and the folks with the plates in their
Yes.
mouth.
Yes.
And
And
that
the
was
net.
it.
Yep, that's
That
true.
was it.
That's
so
true.
For people think that there was a city with a building and people going out of school, that never was. Now, correct me
That's
if I'm wrong,
true.
but I'm thinking about all those years.
That
St.
is
Bernard,
true.
never in any geography book I've ever seen.
That's what they taught us.
You remember National Geographic?
That's all we
National
Jack
Geographic
reinforced that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was a major magazine.
that's a good point.
And some of the photos, Africans with plates, Africans being half nude,
with spears.
Yeah. So they took this negative
And
image
carried it to
of
the
us
degree.
and just constantly.
That's what they showed
Yeah.
us.
That's true.
That's what they showed us here in America
That made
about
us not want
people
to
in
identify.
Africa. Right.
Even
being
visit
Right.
or visit.
Or visit.
Now
Right.
the British people, they had on, their little British junk, whatever
Right.
that mess is, but you know what I mean.
They
But
had their pit helmets.
but
and their shorts.
by comparison,
Okay.
of course, they were dressed
Right.
in this and that, and
They were
and
benevolent.
so
They were the
Yeah.
They came to save us from.
Exactly.
Right.
So
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play some videos of where Ghana is today. You know,
Okay.
and after the before the credits roll,
Okay.
we'll play one of the videos.
We would love that.
And we're going to start, just
Learning.
gradually just exposing African Americans to what Africa really is. It's not as horrible as you've been hearing.
Mm-hmm.
There are nice guys like me. And it will be interesting in the subsequent shows. We are going to discuss and expose more of what Africa really is, because it is an amazing place.
We need that.
We need it. We need it. We need it.
You need to find out, especially go there and experience it for yourself. And, and you be a changed person.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we thank you so much, Francis, for just being here today and really helping us see the light, because this is literally. Twila, you going to do the walk to walk?
Walk to walk real quick. First, shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson. Amazing man. Thank you so much, my mentor. Thank you, my guide. Thank you so much for allowing me to just be in your presence. Wonderful time we had last week in Baltimore. John Cheeks has been working on a legislation piece. He will be with us in the second week in April.
Okay.
The USARA, we fine-tuned some things and tweaked some things, so got to check that out. We are working on this legislation. We want to get the word recovery, not reparations. Reparations means we have to repatriate, which means it's an act of war and you have to go against a nation.
Okay.
That is not what we're doing. That's what they did with the Luxembourg trials. That's what they did with the Nuremberg trials. We don't have a nation in that regard. Recovery means that we can actually get something back for the atonement of something that's wrong. There's a whole list of everything that we're going after, but it's not a taxpayer support, so it means your grandma who's on Social Security, she won't see any difference in her money. She won't see her property taxes going up. Doesn't affect her at all. In this act, we also include, because we've done research and found out that Africans first came on this continent in you teach about Jamestown. 1561, there was a colony of Africans in Spanish area of Florida. So we're going away from back there. There were Haitians and Caribbeans that were brought here as African slaves, We had Haitians that fought in the Revolutionary War. They got stranded here.
Wow.
And then ended up, some of them, they couldn't go back to Haiti because France wouldn't let them go back. They were sent to Grenada, France, England, and a lot of them got trapped right here in Charleston, South Carolina, and ended up becoming slaves, these free men.
Wow.
So we have to include them when we're talking about we need to have recovery. So we want you to keep an eye on that on our site, but go on to Facebook, the USARADC. Facebook, USARADC, and you'll find out more information about that. Next week, I think we got Michael Edmondson.
Yeah, Edmondson.
Oh my gosh.
Powerful,
you gotta be here. You gotta be here. Go on YouTube, connect to the bridge. Check us out on Instagram, and then on Twitter, we're on T Limbs.
Yes.
Until next time, Ron.
Take us home.
Take us home.
Enemies cannot